Do you have a panel session? We have a panel session. Can the panelists come to the stage, please? I'm going to move my, and we can kick you off. We were also going to have, this was going to be our first hybrid panel, but I think it's now, I think one of our hybridists has come live, thank goodness. What's this? Oh, okay. I didn't turn it off. There we go. A mic on helps. Fantastic. Cool. All right, Khai. Are you chairing? Okay, right. Hey, Chris, have we got enough chairs? Fantastic. Yeah, we were supposed to be employing the miracle of Zoom, but I believe everyone's here. So Khai, you're going to manage this. Khai, step up, come on. He's the editor of PocketGamer.biz, and he's going to take over from here. So I'm just going to let you run with it now.
Perfect.
So don't break it. Good luck.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone between and beyond. It is enormously exciting to be here at Pocket Gamer Connects live again, an actual in-person event. But you're not here to listen to me waffle on. You're here to listen to our esteemed panel of experts talk during this panel presentation. What tools should game developers have at hand at all times? Can I get our esteemed panel to introduce themselves, please? Starting with my right, Valerii. Oh, please, yes.
Hello, everybody. So happy to be here. So my name is Valerii Minenko. I am a founder of the Twigames studio. We are a game development company from Ukraine. We are kind of rather small company. We have about 20 people on our team. And we are actually developing games, mostly for mobile and a little bit for other platforms like consoles and VR and PC and something like that.
Brilliant.
Sure. I'm Chris Kempt. I've run a series of studios over the last 20 years or so. Most recently doing hyper-casual games, but also a lot of free-to-play games and Flash games back in the day, which I miss because I love Flash games.
Hello. Hi, everyone. I'm Ben Weeks from Agora, engineer and architect. We specialize in low latency, real-time voice and video. So things like spatial audio and 2D and 3D video in games. And after this session, I've got my own solo session where I'm going to be demoing some groundbreaking stuff in that area. So I hope to see you then as well. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Gordon, and I'm from Anything World. I'm stepping in for Edgar's with less expertise. He's got COVID, my colleague, and we make it easy for everyone to make 3D worlds. And we've got a stand over there, so come and chat to us. You'll see us in these bright colors. Can't miss us.
Mathieu Duperré. Hello. Mathieu Duperré, CEO and founder of Edgegap. We're a gaming backend platform. We help game studios from one-man army to AAA, and we've probably heard it all by that point, considering all the do's and don'ts. So I'm super happy to talk about the tools for the developers today.
Excellent. It's really good to get a wide variety of perspectives on this panel. And I feel like the panel title is perhaps the most pertinent question. What are the tools that game developers should have in their back pocket at all times? Shall we go with?
Yeah, I can start. So
yeah,
at
sure.
least from our point of view, so the developers we've seen with the most successful tools were the ones that were technology agnostic, stuff that can be used across different environments, across different engine or different IDE. So the one that comes to mind, at least from our perspective, is Wireshark, stuff that allows you to get the nitty-gritty of the network, especially for anything that's multiplayer based or backend services, obviously, since we're providing backend services.
Yeah, I'm here to provide very bad insights because I stepped in last minute for my colleague who's got COVID, but I'll do it anyway. I guess like in anything where we bring 3D models to life, so anything to do with 3D content creation, we find useful, like Mixamo is an invaluable tool for that kind of stuff, and we're trying to do Mixamo for everything. But yeah, and also any kind of game engine, obviously. Well, about 10 years ago, all my friends were trying to write their own game engines and almost died whilst they're trying to make a game and write their own game engine, so we shouldn't undervalue, Unity and Unreal. The availability of game engines is obviously a moot point and not a very good one, but I'll do my best.
Cool. So yeah, I totally agree that having SDKs which work on all platforms is really important. So you've got consistency across the different platforms that you support. But also, it's most important, in my opinion, to have SDKs that you use which are trustable. So They're not going to crash. They're reliable. They work in all parts of the world at all time on different networks, and offer the lowest possible latency and stability. If you've got any crashes that are happening consistently on a device, that's going to be really negative for your brand. So small footprint, extremely reliable, ultra low latency. Thanks.
Okay, I guess I'll go next. So I'll come to it from a slightly different perspective. Because I suppose my bent is more creative and production. And so two that I'd like to pick out. I mean, actually, I think the most important thing is to pick the correct tool for the job. But two that I'd like to pick out is just in the modern world, I think everybody should have a phone. I know that sounds really obvious, but I think that one of the things that I've learned is the tools that I use, if they have like just availability, that's the most important thing. And so Steve Jobs said, you know, what's the greatest camera that you can have? Well, the greatest camera you can have is the camera you have on you at all times. And I think likewise, the most powerful notebook, tracking system and so on is the one that you have in your pocket. And then the other one, going back a bit, I didn't want to bring the entire set with me, but one of my favorite, sorry, I didn't want to bring the whole set with me, but one of my favorite tools was invented by Brian Eno in '75, which is a set of cards called Oblique Strategies cards. And it's available as an app as well, but the cards are kind of cool. And so basically, if you get blocked on something, then these cards can help you to employ some lateral thinking. So, for example, here, the suggestion from Brian is make something implied more definite. I don't know whether that helps anyone here. But,
yeah, so the question of tools for us is like really actual because on the one hand, we are really focused to make our work as effective as it's possible. And on the other hand, there is also a point of making new people learn tools. We have it in our questions, as I remember, so we'll discuss it probably later. But anyway, for us, it's kind of like really actual things. And we, as a company, we are also working on contract work. So we are doing games for some like different companies, and it's very often when our client has its own best set of tools and he's sure that we should use it, and we need to learn it actually and deal somehow with it. Because of that, because all of that reasons, we are trying to keep that list of tools for ourselves as small as it's possible, to not add like many like software to our development pipeline. So also we are working with Unity, and Unity is quite rich tool, and during the last like 5 years they took like best tools from market, from asset store, and just integrated into the Unity that also can make our life much easier. Yeah, so if you're talking about the like certain list of tools that we use, exactly, it is like Unity. It's the main one. It's Spine. It's Photoshop, and there are also some tools that use personally me as a producer for management. Probably the most useful from them during the last several years is mockups. So it's a tool for creating mockup. You can do it in Figma or in some other software, and it's kind of critically useful for us because it helps us a lot to define the requirements. So we do it using a pre-production, and it helps us to define the scope of work.
You've all actually kind of pinpointed something I wanted to ask about a moment ago. I've heard a couple of you mention the ubiquity of tools like Unity. And I want to ask if there are any lesser known tools or toolkits that you would like to kind of shout out. And also, how valuable is it for people to work on more bespoke toolkits, as you'd say, like wanting to like train new staff, or whether it's a translatable language, as it were?
I will continue in that way. So we are in our process. We try to avoid less knowable tools in our work, because if something is not so popular, that means that you don't have a lot of info. You probably can have not so good support from their staff. So you will face some issues, and you will need to do some research to work with that. And also, it's always harder to find people who work with that before on the market. So. So, like for us, we are like focused on using like the most mainstream tools because it makes our life much easier.
How about yourself, Matthew? Would you agree with?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in our case, we've seen the team with the most success, which were using automation tools, for example. So developers are lazy; they're human, right? And hi to my developer teams at home. But it's fine. It's completely makes sense, right? So they want to use their time to what's going to bring as much value as possible. So by automating and using different tools out there that are maybe integrated with the most popular engine that you mentioned, for example, Unity, for example, or Unreal also. They can spend their time on where it matters, right? They love coding. You want them to code as a director or managers, and they hate what's around it, and for you it doesn't bring much value. So automating and using those great popular tool, but also all the integration points that come along with it, that is typically bringing value to the developers and to the whole team in general.
Yeah, well, so similar to that, I would I agree with almost everything that's been said, but add to it that I think the main thing is to choose the correct tool for the job, right? And so whilst I agree that a lot of the time, you know, the benefits you were talking about from working in Unity, absolutely the case. Sometimes there's a case where you need a different advantage. So, for example, a couple of the games that I've worked on in the past were built in a tool set called Cocos 2DX, which is a C++ based branch of Cocos 2D. And the thing is that, you know, in that particular case, we were working on a very, very highly illustrated 2D game, which, you know, basically we just couldn't get the performance we needed out of Unity to do it at the time. So. And also the advantage of working in more proprietary tool sets is that you can actually reach in under the hood and get support for, so for example, a new Apple feature or whatever before Unity does. So sometimes there are arguments for working the other direction, I'd say.
Hi, so I'd just like to add that I'm quite a big fan of the web. And I've noticed that recent advances in WebGL and GPUs on phones like this, which can be accessed from browsers now, allows you to very quickly build proof of concepts and even to roll those out in proper apps sort of within the app itself. But things like A-Frame, Mozilla Hubs, sort of VR worlds, they load so much quicker than the web exports that you get from Unity and Unreal. So actually just starting out with something very simple, building your functionality like that and building up from there is a great way to get your game out to, you know, lots of people from just a click. They could see something on a social media site. They don't have to install anything. They can click through it in their browser. They're playing it. And using SDKs like Agoras that can be connected such that they can be sharing voice and video in real time with other people in those same virtual environments.
Yeah, just to pick up on an earlier point that you said, I'm not sure the game developers are lazy. 3 people left when you said that. I don't know if they were developers and went to bed or something. But I think that definitely like the general trend of making creation easier is definitely one that we at Anything World are piggybacking, and like machine learning powering creation for people is an important trend, whether that's via the web or whether it's natural language understanding or auto-completing an email or sentences or creating 3D worlds. Definitely machine learning with complexity behind the scenes, making it easier for everybody to create, making developers' lives easier is definitely a trend we're seeing.
Would you rather see machine learning as a kind of means of, dare I use to say, democratizing development rather than, say, a standardization of language, like learning one toolkit to enable, get a common language to adopt to another one? Is that something of interest, or do you?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of niche tools, aren't they, for your specific needs, whether that's a specific language or specific needs you have within your game application. But yeah, as a general trend, I think machine learning, democratizing and empowering everybody to create new things is something that's very interesting.
Yeah. How frequently do you update the toolkits that you work with then? Like, because we've spoken a bit about kind of proprietary systems, and also the need to ensure that everyone on the team is kind of working in the same kind of language, as it were. So yeah, how often are you upgrading?
It's a very interesting question, because typically you're going to settle down on a set of tools, and first you need to analyze which tools you want to use at what point in time throughout your dev cycle. And once you've settled down, then you kind of have to live with it for a while until you're kind of stuck to some extent. So there's this aspect of, yeah, I'm going to make some decisions at the beginning, and we'll try to live with those decisions throughout the game development cycles. But at the same time, you want to be super fast in how you iterate, because that's how you're going to put your games in the player's hands as quickly as possible and find out what's working, find out what's not working, fix bugs very quickly. So the tools that you will choose and that you will use throughout this cycle will dictate whether I think you're going to be successful or not, because you're going to fail, right? We're all failing at some point, and you want to fail as quickly as possible and as often as possible so that you find success at the end. So that's why I think that you need to be nimble, but at the same time, you need to find a certain set of tools which will give you those flexibility.
Yeah. What situation would force you to change the tools that you
One that comes to mind that I've seen a few times, maybe for some of you in the room, open source was free, so we ended up picking that tool. At the end of the day, they ended up lack of supports. The tool needed 3 developers, in-house developers, which was not you were not saving anymore. That's the one that comes to mind.
Yeah, I guess you can also be hampered by the tools that allow you to create as well. We were back in the previous guys. I was a game developer, and I made one of the first Unity games on PS3 called Derek the Deathfin, underwater papercraft shark game. I'm sure you've never heard of it. Maybe look it up. It's quite stylish. If you don't like the gameplay, that's my fault. But yeah, we were one of the first Unity PS3 games, and we were in TRCs and waiting on Unity to fix bugs in their engine before we could release. So sometimes choosing a toolkit while enabling you can also hamper you, or you've got to be careful. If there's a bug in the tool that you're using and you haven't written it, then you are dependent on that tool maker to make it good before you can release your thing. I guess that's something to bear in mind.
Yep, we're bringing out sort of releases every month on every platform. But one area that I got caught in recently was Apple released in iOS 15, the audio in WebRTC connections stopped coming out of the speaker, so you couldn't really play the game while looking at it. You'd have to hold it to your ear, which isn't very usable. So little things like that, you have to be, if you're deploying stuff in the browser, you have to be on top of all browser releases before they come out and be pushing hard to get fixes before they get rolled out. So while I was advocating the use of the browser, you can find yourself sometimes stuck in a situation out of your control where something gets broken, which is obviously very frustrating and damaging to your brand and business.
Yeah, so I think coming off the back of that, I mean, one thing I've seen consistently over the years is that one of the key ways that you can kind of get tripped up on a game project is by becoming too obsessed with the tools too early. And so I think that one of the things we've been successful with is essentially kind of trying to build things out as simply as we possibly can first, and then working out which elements need to be kind of taken out into some kind of tool set. So for example, I've seen a couple of projects in the past that I didn't work on where there's been a kind of an obsession with getting game content out into a content management system for live updates and so on. But the thing is, if you do that too early, then you can end up very quickly in a situation where you've just externalized a lot of game assets, variables, content that are unnecessary. And you just create enormous legacy and overhead issues that could be avoided. And so I think that tools can be very useful, but they don't do the job for you. So build it first, and then work out what you need to externalize to tools.
Yeah, so for us, updating our toolkit is not the goal. So I think that currently what we have now is so awesome already. Like everything is so easy for game developers now in developing games from the technical side. Like 10 years ago when I started as a junior Unity developer, Unity did not have UI at all. You need to develop it manually every time. And everybody tried to make their own toolkits for the UI to not do that like for every new project. And for now you have so much stuff, you have so many task trackings that try to do everything for you and so on. So for us, I think that our current toolkit is quite good, and we can do like what we need quite fast. And as for changing it, it can happen either if we see some problem that like some bottleneck, and we think that we can avoid it, for example. That's how it happened with Spine. Like Spine at some point just removed a huge pain from us because it can decrease amount of your resources like significantly. So and another point is when we try something, usually we try it because some of our partners ask us about that, and we tried it and we see that okay, it can work better than we use now, and it can be fine, and then we try to integrate it in our processes. Usually we have like some small amount of team, is like me and 2 more person, who try the tool for like a month and see how it goes for us. For example, we are using for task tracking ClickUp, and that's how we did. We just found it and we decided that okay, like me, you and you, we will use it for only one project for a month and we will see how it goes. And in a month we saw that okay, it's cool, and we moved to it, the whole team, little by little. Yeah.
We've spoken about the strengths, the technical strengths of the tools, the toolkits and engines that you're working with. Is this? But I was wondering about how we can implement that kind of the strength of those tools to the creative and design teams. Are we able to like enable design and creative teams to be able to experiment without having to worry about the technical limitations?
Well, if I can come in on that. So I think that actually it's funny you say like it's got so much easier for you over the last 10 years, because from
significantly, you just can't imagine how much easier it became.
Yeah, but so the funny thing is that from my perspective, it's got harder. And so 20 years ago, when I started building my first games, there was this thing called Flash, which was incredibly accessible to creatives. And so you could build a little animation, put some scripting on it, and before you knew it, you had a game that you could publish on any number of websites, and millions of people could play it. And so I personally think that one of the challenges at the moment is that there's a difficulty in taking creative people or people from an arts background into games, because they're not really, through their education, they're not really taught anything about coding and scripting and technical stuff. And I think that's a huge problem in our education system and in our industry. But I think to answer the actual question, I think that ideally you want a team of Ts, right? You need developers that understand what technical, creative people are doing, and you need creatives that understand the other way around. And anything you can do to foster that kind of broad understanding across the team is only going to benefit the process.
That's actually like an interesting question about creative people and how to make them work. Like I think that game development is about trying. So you make like a lot of tries, and at some point you find the best solution. And in that case, like if somebody don't want to work with software, don't want to work with tools, every try takes more time for him. And that's why I don't really like creative people who avoid like software, who avoid tools, because it can like make their effectiveness like much worse because of that. So for me, like I think it's kind of much better if people like it, and if you can make them to learn it, if you can teach them.
Yeah, I totally agree, and And I think that all I'm saying is that there's a hurdle to overcome because, again, people coming into the games industry from graphic design background or whatever don't really have that much exposure to those tools before they come into the team, and so it's a challenge. I also want to make the point that I also don't want to distinguish between. I think programmers and developers are very creative too, right? So actually, in reality, I think the whole team is creative, but
Yeah, I think everybody's creative, and that's like definitely anything else. What we're trying to do is lower the technical barriers to creation of living 3D worlds. So anything that can make anybody a creator in any realm, I think is really good. So like I said before, like machine learning is powering a new wave of creativity, we believe. And if you can just voice a 3D scene and bring it to life or create without any technical knowledge of modeling, rigging, animation, coding, I think that's the best way. And then we'll see more and more of that stuff. So the distinction between, creatives and non-creatives or programmers and graphic designers or 3D modelers, I think that will all hopefully meld into one, and everyone will be able to create at different levels of proficiency. But making everybody a creator in whatever realm is definitely, I think, where we're going, and it's exciting.
I seem to know in my mind there's a fairly old-fashioned division between, because I was about to ask how important it is for creative and design teams to be proficient or semi-proficient with the tools that the technical teams are using, but I'm imagining you're going to say I'm entirely wrong, and there's a shared awareness of this kind of tools that everyone is using.
I wouldn't say you're entirely wrong, that would be rude. Yeah, I mean, obviously people have specialisms, and if you're building something for mobile, you need to keep performance in mind, etc. It's not just you can just create anything and expect it to work anywhere, but definitely lowering those barriers and increasing understanding across these disciplines is definitely something we'll see more of. More hybrid. People do a bit of design, a bit of 3D, a bit of programming, a bit of everything.
Matthew, are you going to defend my ignorance, or you
you're both right in one way. The thing is, when you get to a larger team, you end up with the designer team and then the developers team, and that's where we've seen some challenges, if you will. One of the most common challenge we've seen was the tech team would choose a technology or a library, a vendor, a tool, right? And today's tools are getting more and more niche because they're getting way better than they were before, right? I have this great library who can draw a leaf on a tree that's going to look so real, but it doesn't do flowers. I'm just making stuff up here, but I'm telling you that. So the tech team is making the best decision for that specific challenge. But then the design team is like, yeah, you know what? We're not going to put any leaf. We're going to draw bananas on that tree. And then the tech team is like, okay, well, the tool doesn't really do that. So it's a kind of a loop that we've seen happens not with trees and bananas, but with some, like with the netcode, for example, with anything that relates to game modes, especially. So, we thought this was going to be a 1 versus 1 kind of game. Now it's more of a co-op style stuff, but you're already on the second floor of your building, sir. So the basement was made for that kind of. It was supposed to be a shed. Now you're building a hotel. That's something that we've seen. But so it's about connecting the tech and the design to make this so that it remains a piece of art that's going to evolve and be successful at the end, I think.
I'll just add a couple of little points. I think it's brilliant how you can create assets which are easily transferable across platforms. So animations, 3D objects, etc. It's quite easy to take those into one platform and out of one platform and into another. And another really important thing is that you might have a very talented team of designers, but their eye is so advanced in certain areas that they're not seeing things in the same way that your target audience would. So it's really important to include people who represent your target audience as part of that whole design process to see what they like, keeping it simple and making sure that you're not just sort of working in your own little box with really high precision experts in that area. It's good to address the whole audience.
You mentioned the specificity of or rather the capability of tools in other areas like animation, the like. Are there any toolkits from other industries or other sectors outside of gaming that you think have application in gaming?
We've seen a few. Well, I've mentioned Wireshark, which comes from the telecom space. And it's all about understanding the plumbing, right? So we've seen cases where the studios understood their game client and the game components, the servers, for example. But they had no visibility whatsoever to what's happening under the hood. They knew exactly when you were going to buy those few coins in the app. Like they knew that to the sense, but they had no idea what the experience was from the end user's perspective. So there's a bunch of tools out there that belongs more to the telecom world that I think would probably benefits a lot of the team. The larger team, the problem is if your team is not large enough, and we've heard that many times, oh, we have so many fire to extinguish that we need to focus on the game. Yes, but the game itself is not going to be worth a penny if the experience at the end is not following along the way.
I guess natural language understanding would be one for me, coming from any kind of speech tech and seeing that employed more in games is interesting. Obviously, that's not come from gaming, but voice as a mechanism to create and control, again, pushing anything world is something we're interested in. But I think when we get, more people have VR headsets, Oculus had a good Christmas, Apple, Google, when all these things come out, these mixed reality headsets, voice as a method of creating and controlling, and thereby natural language understanding is going to be an interesting input mechanism into what we're doing.
So, yep, definitely agree with networking tools. And, sorry, what was your one again?
No worries. It was natural language understanding.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, AI, the use of AI.
You can't agree with that much if you don't remember it.
Yeah, no, I was just trying to summarize. Networking, no, but I do. So you've got speech to text, text to speech, the ability to spot objects. So AI is for you. And, God, no, I've forgotten my point. Sorry. Oh yeah, so I was going to say the industry of movies. So things like green screens and the ability to take out backgrounds. What I'm going to be showing in my solo after this is the ability to put live video into 3D worlds, and that very much involves green screen transparency and wrapping 2D videos around cylinders, etc., to make them, and to cast shadows and that type of thing in a 3D environment. So you don't actually have to build your game with all the assets in it. You can stream them in live. I'm looking forward to showing you that after this. Sorry, thank you.
Well, I'll add some creative things. So I think very simple web tools like Google Trends is really useful. Like and I mean, there's been a lot of talk in hyper casual about taking ideas from social media like TikTok and YouTube and so on. So anything that kind of gives you the ability to see what's trending at the time can be very useful like that.
Actually, don't have any such tools in mind right now. The only thing that I thought about that, when the pandemic was started, I was thinking and I expected actually that some tools that grow a lot, like from the video conference call, like Zoom, for example, they will add more stuff into them for people, like not just to communicate between each other, but also to have fun. I personally expected that Zoom will add some like gaming platform to them, and they actually tried initially. So they had some basic stuff for that, but they did not develop it that. And my forecast did not happen. But I still think that can be like a good idea and some channel for games.
Well, actually, I think the Zoom thing still is happening, it's just slow. But actually, I just thought another thing that probably should be mentioned is maybe blockchain. I'll just put it out there.
Just open the can of worms and leave it out, yeah?
Excellent. Well, I've been very selfish in monopolizing our expert panels with my questions, but we have about 5 minutes left, so it'd be great to take some questions to the audience, if anyone has anything they would like to ask. Or should I continue? Oh, no, the young lady in the black top.
Thank you for the young part. So you've said all the tools that you want your developers to have. What is missing? What does the industry need to still build for you?
Well, I'll start by just saying again, I'd like to see a more accessible tool for artists. I think that would propel us forwards.
On a hardware front, the GPU in an Oculus headset, for example, is still sort of fairly middle of the road, and being able to, I mean, the future's going to bring some incredible stuff when the GPUs get stronger, being able to generate photorealistic worlds in real time. What's coming in the next few years is going to be truly immersive, I think.
I would say what's missing is a shameless plug for what we're building, is like allowing everybody to be a 3D content creator. I think that barrier is still too high. So enabling everybody to make living 3D worlds is something that's missing that we're working on, and that makes things super interesting.
I'm going to say more standard. We see a lot of cases where people say, oh, it's working in Unity. Well, Unity is not a standard. There are other different aspects and elements, and if there were standards, you could say that I'm going to replace a certain element with another one, so it'd be easier for developers.
I don't know. I actually know so many great tools, so I think that the next one will be some tools that will develop game instead of me, and the game development will not need me at all after that. So I'm a little bit scared of it, frankly speaking.
Do we have any more questions from the audience, or can I persevere? Because I'm very curious about, Mathieu, you mentioned like a desire for standardization, which is something that we've seen in some other, they're referred to as bastion industries, older industries than the games industry. And the games industry, to me, strikes me as one that has traditionally resisted standardization. What do you think needs to happen for there to be a desire for a...
It's a tough question. I would say, and that's my 2 cents, worth less than 2 cents. I'd say the larger players in the industry, the publishers, the AAAs, would probably have to agree on something, which is most likely a challenge there to start with. But that'd be a first to say, okay, let's sit down and take those most common elements that we all need, because we keep seeing studios reinventing the wheels. There's not enough people in this room to count how many matchmaker we've seen on the market today. So yeah, they would have to at least agree that there is a problem and need, and to sit down and say, let's take those 2-3 main elements and create a few standard around it. That's just my humble opinion.
Well, I'm afraid that's about it that we've got for now. Oh, my apologies. I'm sorry. I thought it was time. No, this is even better. We have a question at the back, I believe.
Yeah, over here. Do you have time?
Yes, please.
Thanks. I'm asking you guys, in your personal opinion, I mean, building a multiplayer these days is, a creative challenge, it's a engineering challenge, and it's also like a publisher challenge. Which one do you think is the biggest obstacle on succeeding?
For me, it's definitely creative challenge. So, I know like a lot of cases of the projects that are not so new, not so creative, and still can earn money because of good marketing and good publishing and so on. But it looks for me that it's so much more difficult to do it for such a project. So if you can make it creative and interesting and new for user, then it's like much more easier to do a publishing and marketing for that.
Okay, so I'd probably go the other way around, but just purely because I think we, particularly in mobile, I'm not sure whether it's true for other sectors, but I think at the moment, basically we've got a situation where really your ability to market the title is essentially whether, dictates whether the game is going to live or die, right? And so basically, we got a situation where you've pretty much got to be doing sort of, well, either very, very low CPIs that are only achievable if you've got something that really hits a particular zeitgeist, or you've got to have pretty decent LTVs. And so I would say that the key problem is the publishing issue, and I agree that the creative has an effect on that, right? But it means that we have a situation now where there are actually very good, very, very playable games which are just not viable in the current market. And so I think that's a bit of an issue.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, I guess there's challenges across the board. It's getting easier to create, and that's something that we're very passionate about. But yeah, obviously, if you create something amazing and nobody sees it, then what are you going to do? There's no, I guess, solution with publishing and marketing to make sure you get seen. A lot of times it's a lottery, isn't it? But yeah.
I'm afraid it does look like we've got about 9 seconds very specifically remaining. Can I please thank Valerii, Minenko at Twigames, Twigames, Gordon Midwwod, Anything World, Mathieu Duperré, Edgegap, Chris Kempt, and Ben Weeks at Agora. Can I please have your heartiest congratulations and applause for our panelists, please? And thank you, guys.
for Khai in his inaugural chairing.
That's
Thank you
my
very much,
first
Khai.
one.
Good work. Well done.